Okay, this is a extra lab on top of the Lab 5 for Photoshop. I'm doing this mostly because there are a few weird things about PhotoPea that are different than Photoshop, and I don't want you to be confused as you're working with PhotoPea and how to do a few steps. So first thing you're going to do is open up your file. I'm going to go onto the desktop and search up picture of my son. And I'm going to open up the JPEG. I know there's a RAW and a PSD, but I'm just going to open up the JPEG. And that's probably what you're going to get when you use your phone photos. It might turn out to be something called the HEIC file. You want to convert that to a JPEG. Okay, so now we have our image here. The next thing I want you to notice is that it's not as easy to make a duplicate layer of your background copy. I talk about how you don't want to ever edit on top of your original image. So you can't just hit Control or Command and get a drop-down menu with options. So instead you can just make a layer, a new layer, and then I'm going to go back to my background layer and I'm going to hit Control A, and it's going to select everything. So Control A, and A is really the quick shortcut to a selection. And then I'm going to do Control C, and I'm going to go to the layer 1 and then Control V. And then that's going to pop right in there for layer 1. Then I'm going to rename these just like you did in Lab 5. So double click, and then I'm going to call this one the master copy, and I'm going to call this one working layer, or working copy is fine too. Okay. So now the next thing that's going to be a little different is in Photoshop, you're going to have this nice, you have your adjustment layers options up here. You're going to have a tab for that. I have looked and I cannot find it. If you guys find it, please do let me know. But I did find another way to get to your layers and your adjustment layers, and that's to go to layer and then just create a new adjustment layer. So in Photoshop, you're going to see that tab here, and it's going to have a lot of, like, in fact, we should just open it up real quick so you understand what I'm talking about. Making adjustments on your lighting, your color balance, your contrast, your saturation, all that stuff. All right, so here are your adjustment layers, and it's a tab in this section here. And you have all these really nice little icons, which are really handy. But I'm not seeing that up here. So instead you have to go up to layer and then new adjustment layer. And it's the same stuff, but it's just, you have to go a different path to get to it. So the two adjustment layers that we talked about in Lab 5 are your levels, which is your range of value. And that's going to pop up here, and it's, it's like a kind of a sad version of Photoshop histogram here, but you're going to move these tabs around to adjust your light and your exposure. And little subtle adjustments unless your photo is super, super dark, super, super light. And then you're just going to close that down again. Now you can do that by clicking on a layer, or I just like to expand and contract like that. Okay, so now you have a levels layer. Quick thing about layers, I don't know if I talked about it in the last lab, is that whatever layer is at the top is in the front of your image, and whichever layer is at the bottom of your row is in the back. So this is on top of this one here. Now, if you make a bunch of layers and a bunch of different adjustments to your image, where you put it in this row is going to start to matter. But for now, this is pretty simple. So you're going to make a levels adjustment layer, and then you're going to make a color balance adjustment layer. And this one is just about adjusting color. So I'm noticing that my image looked a little green. So I'm going to bump up the red just a little bit, just a touch. And you never want to mess with these too much, right? Right now we're going for realism. We're not going for crazy, wild, saturated color. All right, so that's one thing that's different. Another thing that's different is how to resize your image. So I'm going to go up to image size, and it's just going to be a lot simpler, right? We want to make sure that we've got resample clicked, and we want to make sure we're in inches, and that our longest side is 10, and that our DPI is 300. Hit OK, and that's not going to shrink it. Sometimes it shrinks it down if it's a giant file. Remember, you can hold down Command and plus to make it big and Command minus to make it small. Okay, so that is the one of the main differences. Let's see, saving it. So saving it is one of the final differences you're going to notice. You can't just do save as and have it open up another box with all these options. The nice thing about PhotoPea is that you can save a PSD. PSD stands for Photoshop file, and if I open this PSD in Photoshop, it will work. And it will also show me all your levels and your layers. In fact, we might want to do that. So you're going to definitely save it as a PSD. You might want to rename it before you do that. And then you also want to export it as a JPEG. Because usually when you share these things with me, I want to see a PSD and a JPEG. The JPEG is like a thumbnail and I can see what the picture is right away. And then the PSD is going to help me grade your work because I can see your layers. JPEG format, don't mess with any of this. It's all the same. You already resized it. You can mess with the quality a little bit, but that's going to make it bigger. Go ahead and click save, and then you would always submit, like I said, the PSD version and the JPEG version of your edit. And then let's go ahead and test this out, and we're going to take this PSD and we're going to put it in Photoshop, and there it is. Okay, and then there's our master, our working copy, our color balance layer, and our levels layer. But you can kind of see the difference. Like, you know, it's just Photoshop is awesome. Okay, all right. And then when you go up to image size, of course, you get all these options. And then when you go up to save as, you get like, you know, all of these like options where you can drop down and choose all this stuff. It's just not the case with PhotoPea. Okay. All right, that is the end of this lab. Thank you so much.